Today's episode of Darkness Radio is brought to you by Microdose. Get out of pain, get out of anxiety, and start treating yourself a little bit better. Try Microdose. Microdose is a CBD THC gummy that will get you out of pain, get you out of anxiety, and get you into feeling good again. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use the code DARKNESS to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description, but again, that's microdose.com, code DARKNESS. Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. Got a very good show for you today. I got a guest who you can never accuse of sitting on his laurels and never doing anything in the paranormal. This man has been, since I've known him, since 2006, has been busier than busy and manages to keep many irons in the paranormal fire and productive ones at that. This man has always been pushing the boundaries of the paranormal and has always been at the forefront of paranormal. And, you know, you have some people who I guess are just kind of wading in the paranormal pool and doing their thing and managing to just kind of keep their head above water. And then you have some that are constantly asking questions that push that boundary, that want to get down to the business of the paranormal and figure out what exactly this whole thing is about. He has a new book out there about his life. It's called Grains of Sand, Tales of a Paranormal Life. He also has a traveling exhibit out there called The History of the Paranormal. We'll talk about that as well today. And you can see him all over television, whether it be reruns of Haunted Collector. And he's on Discovery Plus as well with other television shows. We'll talk about those as well. Let's welcome in to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show, Brian J.Cano. Brian, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Tim. It's good to be back on Darkness Radio. How have you been?
Pretty good, my friend. And I take it you're doing well as well. You, I tell you, it seems like as we read in the book, ever since that fateful day where you packed your boxes from the PR firm and took off, you've been hitting the ground running.
You know, whenever I come on to a podcast or do some other show and my intro gets longer and longer, and sometimes I think, oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. And it really came to a focus this past weekend when I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, showing my History of the Paranormal exhibit at the Bell Mansion. And on that Sunday, after packing up the exhibit, I had some time to wander about the town. And I always like to go to old bookstores to see what paranormal selections they have. And I'm on a quest. It's like Pokemon, like Dustin, he's all about catching them all Pokemon. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm looking for all the Hans Holzer books. Yeah. And the guy wrote over 120 of them, and I'm going to catch them all. I'm going to get them all. But I go to these old bookstores to see their paranormal sections, to see, okay, what can I pick up? And from time to time, I'll discover gems that I've been looking for. And this past weekend, I found two books that to be honest, it's not like I look for ego to be like, hey, let me see if I'm in this book. But I just happened to be flipping through the index on the back. Like one of them, Jeff Belanger did the forward to. So I'm like, oh, Jeff, okay, let me check this book out and let me look in the back. And I found I was quoted in it. I said, oh, wow, this was back in the scare days. Yeah. So two books I found on the shelves I had forgotten that I was in. I had forgotten that I had been interviewed and quoted for it. And it really helps sometimes when I feel like I'm not doing enough, or I'm not making any impact, or I'm not making any change, that, okay, people sought me out these past 20 years to ask my opinion for whatever that's worth. And yeah, I mean, I'm out there in little ways, and so many of us in the paranormal field mistakenly take TV as the benchmark of doing well, and that's not so much so. And even when I get down on myself, like, they're using my quotes less and less on Paranormal Corner Camera. I want to get back out on the field. I want to get back in an investigative TV space, I have to remember, well, I'm still doing a lot of work. I'm still doing these things. And again, your intro alone reminded me of some of the things I'm doing. So I guess I'm all right.
You bring up an interesting point there, and I want to get to that, and that is the benchmark of what is making waves in the paranormal. And I think it's different these days. You know, you cite TV as being that benchmark, but look at how much we've grown, and I would cite even from the time that you and I really have gotten to know each other in the mid to early 2000s, and to now in 2022. You look at investigators that are getting to be known through YouTube, and look at the beginning of your career in Scared, and where you started to launch Scared, and where everything is now, and how you go from guerrilla marketing to mainstream television to how everything is back to guerrilla marketing again. It's kind of funny, isn't it?
It's a weird thing because I remember vividly days before YouTube existed. And when it first came out, a lot of us were thinking, what's this? You're going to upload video to the internet? Those files are huge. That'll never work. And I remember back in the days of MySpace,
Yeah,
we had a Scared profile. And I remember making the GIFs that said, hey, do you want to see our show? Give us your address. And I would physically mail people DVDs to watch the show. So that's just kind of showing the dinosaur that I am. But the benchmark of doing well today, like, you talk about power celebrities and you talk about researchers, and there's different categories, and we're all melded together in this stew. And it really is important to parse out the identities of all the people in it, because there are your paranormal tourists, and that's the biggest category.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with tourism.
No,
Sometimes the
no.
term is used as an insult, like, oh, you're just a tourist.
Nope.
But our economy needs tourism.
Right.
These locations need tourism, but we who are very serious about it, and that's a category that I'll get to, we look upon the tourists and we feel like, oh, you're wasting our time. You're just getting in the way. This is annoying. But as long as they identify as such, and we understand that, yes, they're tourists, they're not going to have the same panache for the details as we do, it's okay, and that's great. I recognize who you are. I know what I do. So as long as we're clear about that, then you have your black shirts, your paranormal investigators, smaller group. But this makes up all the entry level people who watch the shows, get inspired by them, and then take an active role in, all right, let's see what's out there. Let's see what I can discover. And maybe I'll team up with some people who are like-minded as I am. And that's the middle school. That's where you make a lot of mistakes. You go down the wrong avenues. We all did it. I did it.
Yep.
You did it.
Yep.
We've all been there.
Yep.
And then you have the smallest category, the smallest of categories, and that's the paranormal researcher. This is the person who, over the long term, wants to affect change, make hypotheses that eventually become theories, and try to build a stronger foundation for this whole thing that we call the paranormal, that to this day is a pseudoscience. I feel is losing ground in academia, but is gaining it in entertainment. And again, I've been on a lot of the TV shows, and even I get sidetracked sometimes. I think, like, especially around this time of year, it's Halloween. So the networks like to pay attention to their shows that are investigative in nature. And again, I know all these cats, so this is no shade on any of them. They're doing good work. They're doing entertaining stuff. But I'll see on Twitter and on Facebook how the network sends them gift baskets, and here, take this and take that. Oh, wow, thanks, that channel, for look at all the things you sent me. And here I am sitting, I'm like, yep, I'm never going to get one of those. Yeah. You only play my show pretty much every day. It's not the things I want, it's the acknowledgement. And sometimes that makes me, and I'll say it here, I'm saying it on Darkness Radio, coming out and saying, that makes me feel pretty crummy. Makes me feel like, all right, you don't value me and my show as much as you do that one over there. And that sometimes puts us in a competitive mindset that is detrimental to things. And I don't like thinking that way. I don't like getting up and thinking, Oh, okay. Feel like crap today. Thanks for starting my day out that way while people humble brag on social media. And if this is really about the work and this is really about digging into those mysteries of the universe, all that stuff doesn't matter. But again, I'm human, so sometimes I get bogged down on the muck with everybody else, and I think like, hey, I wanted a, a soda cozy with the travel logo on it too. Why can't I? I'm not good enough for a cozy. But then I just got to remember, that's not the important thing. That's not why I got started. So yeah, let's get back to basics and let's get back to the reasons why we do things. And that's one of the main reasons why I wrote my book, was to reflect on all those early moments that got me started. And now I'm here, and let's look back.
Let me ask you a question before we get into some of those early moments and before we start talking about some of those moments that matter, because they do matter. And they're moments, I think, that are going to teach a lot of people a lot about why we do get those thrills from those shows, and why the heart of the matter of those thrills, and why we shouldn't lose sight of why we get those thrills. Brian, you brought up a very interesting point, and that is the sexy thrill of a jump scare from watching these TV shows and the academia of the paranormal, and why we can't make academia more sexy on television, and why it is that producers, the minute we get to the academia of the paranormal, want to turn away from it. They think that people sitting at home don't want to digest it, or they think their eyes are going to roll back in their head, or they're going to fall asleep, or, hey, you know what? I can hear the channels changing right this moment. At least that's what a producer is going to think. Why do you think it is that producers don't give the proper credit to the audience, that they can't absorb the academia of the paranormal?
It's a very good point, and it's an observation that we've been making for decades now, ever since the explosion of the paranormal shows on TV. The paranormal and producers, we forge a temporary partnership while we're looking for truth and while we're looking to establish norms and try to further what it is that we're looking into. That partnership is only based on what we can do for them. And again, being on TV has been great. I've enjoyed it. I've been on both sides of it. But the producers, and again, in defense of them, none of them have said, yes, we want to know the truth. No, they're doing a job. Just like if you called a roofer to your house and you're like, hey, come fix my roof. And oh, by the way, why does the sun shine in when that hole in my roof is very, then weird things and animals come in. Why does this happen? They're like, okay, well, I don't know. I'm going to fix your roof. And while you're there, you have a nice conversation, de facto friendship with that person. And then once the job is done, you go your separate ways. And with TV, they're in it for a job. And most of those cats make more money than the on-screen talent. I remember being on the road with Haunted Collector. And again, that was an amazing experience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking around and I'm looking at the checks I'm getting per episode, and I'm thinking, I should have been a camera guy. I should have a sound guy, any of the producers. And that's where the public assumes that because we're the face of TV, that we're rolling in dough. And Tim, you should never look yourself up online, because you'll find those sites that say, oh, Brian J.Cano, is he married? What's he worth? What's he doing right now? And I found it's been reported that I'm worth 13 million.
What?
Yeah. Hey, I must be living large. I must be one of those shadow billionaires that is just roughing it, ironically. But the partnership between producers and paranormal people, believe me, I've tried to pitch the educational aspect, and you can see their eyes glaze over the minute you say, okay, well, it's going to be educational. They don't want to know. And again, not to knock the shows, but I'm gonna knock the shows. They're all the same. Mm-hmm. Nothing new has been gleaned. But that's the thing. None of the shows say they're documentaries. None of the shows are produced from a grant from PBS, and today we're going to be talking about the paranormal. No, none of that. It's all for the entertainment value, the jump scares, and to keep you through that commercial break. And for those people who are into it, yeah, the shows are entertaining. You get to see places that you probably won't be able to get to ever. You get to see new equipment. You get to see the personalities of the people. And it really is a cult of personality at the end of the day, because you're going to tune into the show for the person or group of people that most closely reflects your current outlook on the paranormal. So you pick your flavor. You have the old guard who's on TV. You've got the newcomers who are kind of trying to mix up with different things. And talk to anybody. Everyone will have a show they love. Everyone will have a show that they say, oh, I hate that show because they're doing it wrong. Or are they? They've been on for like over a decade. So
yeah,
they're doing something right.
Right.
But not in the eyes of academia, but for TV, they're giving the producers what they want, and they're going to keep being on the air as long as that continues. But for us, for me personally, I feel like I'm wedged in between the two worlds. I want academia to play a bigger role, and anything that I've ever done has been in the service of, hey, let's teach people a little bit more. Let's try to firm up that foundation so we can all rise together. But as I always say, education is not sexy. So if you can entertain them, and if you could kind of trick them into learning, so to say, then you had fun and you come away with some new knowledge. Everybody wins.
Exactly. You know, I'm not picking by any means, but pointing out for a good example, Brandon Alvis, when he was on that iteration of Ghost Hunters, was trying to do some new and different experiments on air. And I think he got a little frustrated because the producers of Ghost Hunters, I don't think, wanted that. They didn't want something new and different, and didn't want. And this is, I think, his interpretation as I've seen it online. I haven't necessarily spoken to him about it on air, so I'll throw that disclaimer out here. But it looked to me like maybe there was some butting of heads there. That you know, he tried to show a different side, or a more academic side of the paranormal, and it maybe didn't fit the description of what maybe producers wanted there. And go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, they've got the producers. They have their marching orders. So very much when the show gets greenlit and all the producers are there, you have everybody trying to most efficiently make a show. Any kind of diversion from that is worrisome to them. Like, oh, we don't know if we're going to be like this. This might be an avenue that we're going to go down. It won't get us results. And because of that, we'll have wasted, say, 4 or 5 hours of production time that someone's got to pay for. And now we're going to go over budget, and who's going to get chewed out over it? Will someone get fired over it? So again, it's not a documentary. They are not looking necessarily to break any new ground. However, that being said, on Haunted Collector, producers were always asking me, all right, so Brian, what's the new gear for this episode? Like, new gear? Like, there is no new gear. The gear we have is the gear we have. Mm-hmm. You don't go to a handyman like, okay, well, you got a hammer and you got a screwdriver and you got a saw. What's the new piece of gear you got? It's like, I don't have any other gear. This is what I've got. Yeah. And in the paranormal, gear for the most part is really either EMF based, pick the number of lights on your gadget, or something in the area of ITC. So, and especially back in the Haunted Collector days, I hadn't been experienced enough to try to go beyond that. But at the same time, you can't have a different piece of equipment every episode because there's only a limited pool to choose from.
Do you feel like now more than ever, there's more pressure on different shows to come up with equipment that isn't necessarily there, to come up with things to try and find spirits?
Necessity is the mother of invention. And I really do think that it's in some ways a good thing that there's so many shows trying to rise above or outdo their competition by having the latest flashy gadget or method. And from that has come some interesting iterations. Now, there are some things that I've seen out in the world that have caught on that I completely disagree with and am irked by because people are only doing it because they saw it on television. And they're not necessarily questioning why. And sometimes I will admit, I do get a chip in my shoulder when that happens. And people are like, oh, I went to the location and I did this. I'm like, oh, yeah. Why'd you do that? Oh, because it works. Oh, does it? Do continue. Oh, it definitely works. Oh, definitely. Oh, we got definitely now. Okay, we're working in absolutes. Only the Sith deal in absolutes. No.
That is true. What?
But and again, and I joke around about it. I mean, I'm doing this for 20 years. I equate every decade to a class, so I'm really only entering my junior year of paranormal schooling. So that's still, I've got a lot to go. But I also feel I've been in it long enough that I can be a little crotchety at times and get away with it, or at least try to get away with it.
True. Well, it's healthy to question. I mean, it's very healthy to question. I think if you don't question, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Is there a piece of equipment out there right now, I guess it's newer, that you would say to yourself, well, you know, I really don't trust this because of this? One of those newer pieces of equipment that you go, man, I really just can't buy into that.
I think when it comes to the equipment lately, there hasn't been a new piece that's operating off of a completely different theory. It's just modifications of the existing. Like I say, it's either EMF based. So whether you have your REM pod or some kind of detection piece of gear with whatever the modality it's in, it's kind of all the same. Hide it in a dog, in a stuffed animal, or you put it in a 3D printed, visually pleasing package. It's kind of all the same. Right. And now you look over to ITC. I remember a day way back when, you probably remember this too, Tim, where I think it came out of the Stanley Hotel, and there was this I refer to it as a prophecy back when spirit boxes were first hitting the scene, and Frank Sumption had his Frank's box.
Yes.
And this prophecy came out that there's only 30 people on the planet that can operate these devices. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You were one of the few. This is like a Mandela effect, because so many people I talk to do not remember this.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember.
I clearly remember it.
I was in the depth of my skeptic phase at that point, and I'm like, first of all, I don't know if these spirit boxes work, but if you're saying only 30 people could use it, that's suspect. But I remember all the personalities lining up because they wanted to be one of the 30.
In fact, I remember who said it. Wasn't it Chris Moon?
I believe there was a Chris there. I feel like the names was, I feel like Chris Fleming was around, Chip Coffey.
Yep.
Chris Moon might have been one of them because he rolled in Sumption Circle at one point, or there was a rivalry. I don't remember. Don't quote me on any of that.
I think it was Christopher Moon who said it. In fact, he just contacted me recently and wanted to come back on the show. So I will contact you and let you know, because I'm going to have him back on the show. So I will let you know, and we'll come full circle with that and figure out if that was the case or not. But yes, that was definitely said, and it was said at the Stanley Hotel.
Now, remember that. Now, that was a day where, it seemed like we were unlocking some very mystic, some very next level contact. Okay, if there's only 30 people, who are those chosen, and what will they usher in with that communication? Now, everyone's got a spirit box, and like everything else, like cars, there's different models. There's the portal box, there's the this box, there's the that box, there's the, whatever you want to call it, box with different lights. And this one's housed in an old radio, and this one's 3D printed, and this one I hollowed out my old pet and I shoved it in its guts. And every possible device you can have. Some of them are on computers, some of them are on apps. We're now willy-nilly just contacting, and that prophecy, I wonder if that was an ego-based thing, or it was something that maybe we shouldn't be tampering with this. And I went through that little bit of hesitation where I felt like, okay, just because we can do a thing doesn't mean that we should do that thing. And I mean, of course, I've got a spirit box in my kit. I work with Gary Gawk all the time and his
Yep.
DOS Onk and the Mini Onk and all his attempts to bring a clever and utilitarian twist to the gear that comes out. Like everything the man does is he's thought of it carefully 6 ways to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, as far as is there gear out there that I don't necessarily buy, I haven't seen anything really new yet. Methods, yes, there's methods that I cannot stand. And there's gadgets that, again, through no fault of their own, I don't think a machine can do something wrong. A machine is designed to do a task, and it's the interpretation of those results that can be in error. So one that comes to mind is the SLS camera. I'm not a fan because I feel like it still has a ways to go for it to be functional so that the evidence it collects is useful to us, right? Right now, it seems to be a bias confirmer.
Okay.
And I mean, I've seen things that I can't explain, and I've had people that I know and trust say, "Oh, well, we got this with the SLS cam," and I go, "All right, cool, great, awesome."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are certain things to the SLS camera that look odd. You know, I mean, things that blip in and blip out, but again, could be an anomaly. It just doesn't seem to, and sometimes you get lucky and it lines up with what you seem to think is happening inside a room at the time that you're investigating. But yeah, you're right. There are some times where it just so happens to line up perfectly with what you're doing, and other times where there's just things that are happening that don't make any sense. It's just, and like I say, we're breaking normal everyday things to try to make them fit to what we're doing. And like the shack hack is a broken radio. Let's face it. We broke a tuner peg on a radio and said, let's make it a white noise object to try and fit what we're doing.
I remember, speaking of some of those cats that we mentioned, I do remember back at Phenomenology in Gettysburg when we'd all gather for those conventions. I remember Chris Fleming being out there, and he did a little video where he was in his car, and he's like, "Oh, let's just hit scan, and let's see what we can get from that." And yeah, that's the shack hack. It's broken radio.
That is, and I remember sitting at I don't remember which event it was in Bill Chappell showing us it's simple to build one of these shack hacks, and he would sit everybody down and say, "This is how you do it. This is the tuner peg right here." And I remember us going to different Radio Shacks in the area in Colorado and buying every single white version of the Radio Shack portable radio and hacking that exact tuner peg and then turning around and selling them for whatever, just a little bit over retail.
I never had the white one. I had the black one that followed it because I could never find the white ones because people bought them.
That's right. They bought them out. They bought them out because it was real simple to go in the back, hack the tuner peg, and
bend it down, and then there it goes.
There it goes. And it was real easy to make your own shack hack.
Well, here it is, and that's an important point you bring up. Knowing why something works, knowing why the equipment works. So we know that the radio is designed to scan the stations and stop on the next signal so that it can tune it in. Mm-hmm. We're taking that peg and we're bending it down so that it will scan, but never be able to attune to any one station. So what people are lacking these days is the understanding of their equipment. They buy them and they feel that, okay, because I bought it, it now engenders me with the expertise to be able to operate it, repair it if necessary, and interpret the data that's coming through. And not a single I've got Pelican's worth of equipment in the closet, and not a single device in there is a ghost finder, ghost detector, ghost anything. It's just all equipment to gather data. Right. And it's up to me to be able to interpret that. And there's so much bias involved in the field that we have to try to parse through.
Very true. Very true. Tell you what, we'll take our break right now, Brian. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the one instrument that's not in your closet that you've used to gather data with, and that is you. And we'll talk a little bit about experiences you've had with that instrument. and the different, we'll even go into theological explanations of things. You and I have met one person in particular that I want to talk about who may have changed the course of your life and theologically, and that is Adam Bly. So I want to talk a little bit about Adam Bly today as well, and a similar experience you and I have had with him. And this is going to be interesting, folks, because we'll talk a little bit about angels and demons and what they are, and is it possible that good and evil do walk the earth, especially as we come to the Halloween season and the veil thins? We'll talk about skeptics, believers, and whether it's healthy to have a bit of a believer side to you, and whether that belief can change over time, and has it changed with Brian? We'll talk about that when we come back. When we come back, we'll talk more with Brian about being a skeptic, about maybe switching over to becoming a believer. We'll talk about life, death, heaven, and hell, and we'll talk a little bit about demons. That's coming up next on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. My guest is Brian J.Cano. The book we're talking about today, which is out there, is Brian's biography. It's called Grains of Sand, Tales of a Paranormal Life. I encourage you to pick it up, folks. Not only is it's a quick read because it's an interesting read. And I'll tell you, there's an experience at the end of the book that, I'll just put it this way, Brian. If you were going to a concert, you never go alone, because you and I, my friend, share a love of one particular band we'll talk about at the end of the show. You just would have never had a hard time finding a buddy to go with. I'll just put it that way. Before the break, I had teased, Brian, that there's such a thing as skeptics and believers, and if it's possible to change your outlook over the years. And I get this question all the time, especially when I do other shows. And they ask me, Tim, is it easy for you, or have you changed over the years? And I always say, yes, I've changed my belief over the time that I've done the show. So I'll throw that question out, and it's an easy softball question for you, Brian, as we get into this second part of the show. Has your belief changed since you started scared and to this moment right here as we're sitting here?
My beliefs have changed quite profoundly since getting into the paranormal, and they had changed before that. And I always tell people that when you're a child, you believe in everything because you have no reason not to. You're told something, you accept it, and that's that. So the young child in all of us, we have Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, and insert deity here, insert religious figure here. Mm-hmm. And as we get older, we start to lose all those figures. And some of us lose all of them. Some of us lose some or most. And I found myself coming out of college a very skeptical person, and I believed in nothing. I was raised Catholic. I was going through a crisis of faith, and I said, yeah, God is dead. Maybe he created us, but yeah, he's gone and we're alone. And whatever's going on out there, it's just us. We die and then we're worm food. That's it. Dirt nap, done. And it took getting into the paranormal to not only bring me back to spirituality, it renewed a lot of those old beliefs. So when you're a kid, the world is an amazing place. It's filled with mystery and wonder and adventures to go on. And I've been on some of those adventures. I've been to places like just this past summer, I found myself on the shore of Loch Ness up in Scotland. And I was by myself. It was first thing in the morning. It was a rainy morning, as it is in the Highlands. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I remember first hearing about this as a kid watching In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. One of these days I'm going to go there. And as you get older, you're like, yeah, I'm never going to get anywhere. How am I going to do this? How can I afford this? I got work. I've got a job. Do I have enough vacation days? Oh my God, taxes. And you're bogged down by everything that this world throws at you. But there I was on and it's not like a sandy beach, it's rocks and pebbles. I'm walking on the shore and I dip a foot in. I said, okay, now I'm in Loch Ness. Here I am. And I said, okay, if I know I'm not going to see Nessie, but if there's a sign, could someone show me a sign? Am I supposed to be here? And Tim, I kid you not, just at that moment, the sky opened up, a shaft of sunlight came down, illuminated the portion of beach I was standing on to the point where I was able to take a picture of my long shadow extending into the loch. And it occurred for maybe 20, 30 seconds, and then it closed up.
Oh,
and
wow.
I never saw sun there again. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Old Brian, 2002 skeptic Brian would not have taken heed of that moment at all. He wouldn't have even asked for it. But in everything I've been through and all the changes and all the things that the paranormal has given back to me, I was able, A, to ask, and then B, to receive a sign and then understand in the moment what that sign was. That was a thumbs up. And everything in grains of sand are all the tales of things that occurred and happened that I didn't notice at the time, that it took reflection to look upon. So Loch Ness will not be a grain of sand. It'll just be like, hey, Tim, guess what happened to me? And it's already present in my mind as a sign, as a lesson. Whereas the things that the past 20 years I've experienced really has changed me. So I've gone from skeptic to skeptical believer. And I say skeptical believer because I think it's always important to maintain some skepticism. The opposite of which is to be naive, and you certainly don't want to be naive.
Mm-hmm.
But when people come and say, oh, this happened to me, I'm not going to automatically believe them. I'll say, okay, well, I know the phenomena exist. Yes, I know there are things out there. But did you really see what you thought you saw? And over the past 2 decades, I've really gotten into parapsychology. And the first question that a parapsychologist is faced with is it authentic? It's question number one. Is it authentic? Okay, if I judge that it's so, you moved on to the next one. How does it work? Okay, what's operating beneath the surface? So everything that I've learned, I try to pass on, and be it in entertainment book form or my classes or my events. I can't say I'm an expert. I'm experienced. I have some wisdom, it's a little bit. Still got a lot more to gather up.
Yeah.
But I feel that in this space now, as a skeptical believer, this is a comfortable little niche to be in. I could see both sides of it and try to really examine what's going on.
This question may seem a little bit odd coming off that proclamation, skeptical believer, because some people believe if you open yourself all the way and become a believer, that you know no bounds. Once you believe everything, you open up your universe to everything. That the moment you become a skeptic or cynic, you close yourself off to any possibility that the universe presents itself to. At least that's the metaphysical belief, if you will, of everything around you. I don't know that I necessarily subscribe to that. I, like you, am a skeptical believer. I believe it's healthy to question. It's always healthy to question. You have to question. If you don't question, I believe, again, like I stated earlier in this program, you're doing yourself and others a disservice. And I'll give you an example. But the one question I want to ask off that statement is this. In the book, you state about your experiences with astral travel when you were young. And something that a lot of people have come on this program and talked about. I know I believe when I was younger, had some experiences with, maybe even when I was older, but I can only tell you in dream states. And I know you related to a dream state, almost when you were falling asleep and and traveling astrally. And I won't ruin it for people who want to read the book. I want them to experience it with you in the book. But you state that at a time it came to an end. But I almost get the feeling that when it came to an end, it came to an end for you as your beliefs started to become more skeptical. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. It was definitely, well, the recognition of what I think might have been going on. And back then, I just thought it was, okay, this was a dream. Wow, this is a weird dream. I wonder why I keep having this. And when it ended seemingly abruptly, I thought, okay, well, that's a weird occurrence to happen. I guess that just happens when you get older. That's what happens when you leave behind childhood, and this is now who you are. But I always thought that the acknowledgement of that and the rediscovery of what it might be would unlock those doors again for me to get back to that earlier state. And as of yet, it hasn't. I talk about it a lot. I wrote about it in the book. I lecture about it as well. And to this date, yeah, there's been no revisiting of those prior abilities. But I feel like, okay, this busy guy might not be in the right space. And who knows, this might be something that has yet to come down the road for me. But we create our own reality. If we believe everything, then sure, why not? Classic example, you have the friendship of Harry Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Harry Houdini, who contrary to popular belief, he wasn't a skeptic. He believed. He just was. There was nobody around who could properly enforce that his hopes that he would be able to reconnect with his mother. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who, despite the creation of the world's most logical consulting detective, who will follow the evidence, who will look at things and will be able to judge and see and evaluate, the man believed in everything. He was a spiritualist. And if someone came to him and said, "Hi, I'm a psychic medium, the sky is purple, and yeah, I can fly," he'd be like, "Okay, yeah, sure." Whereas the rest of us would be like, "No, the sky's not purple and you can fly, show me." He just took them at their word, and that was that. And their friendship was strained over Houdini's efforts to disprove the things that these psychic mediums were saying. So yeah, we could go on that track. We could go on the Doyle track and say, yeah, well, believe in everything. Let's be open to everything. But that's our reality.
Yeah. That's
not truth. Truth exists separate of our hopes for it, our labeling of it. The universe exists as it is. And without getting too deep into metaphysics, like, yeah, we can alter and shape and do different things where we can literally reshape reality. But in the here and now, I can disbelieve gravity, but if I step off of a 10-story building, it's going to introduce itself very painfully to me.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. But somewhere between the truth, which is this dimension, and belief, which is somewhere in another dimension, is quantum physics, which is, like you stated, the belief that you want to shape this world into what you want to shape it into, and you might possibly be able to, which is kind of funny because now you see articles about, possibly heaven being another quantum physical dimension, which is somewhat encouraging, I guess. That somewhere science and the metaphysical may meet somewhere in the middle is kind of encouraging. I guess I bring all this full circle because I wanted to speak a little bit about and talk a little bit about what you mentioned as your upbringing in the book. I find it ironic because we have kind of similar upbringings in that, not that I was never in a Catholic school, but raised Catholic and as an altar boy. And that you mentioned, you have this crisis of faith. God is dead. We all end up worm food. What is it about Catholic boys and crisis of faith? Is what I want to know. Do we all have this deal where we, after having the dogma beat out of us. We
Well, you look at Catholicism as it's presented to us, where we have to go to church every Sunday, and it's sit, stand, sit, stand, sit, stand, kneel, stand, sit, kneel, stand, sit. All right, am I doing it right? Am I getting close to heaven? The guy has, what's around all of us. Okay, first of all, on the altar, the guy, Jesus crucified. There is something positive to look forward to. Oh, all around us in the world, the stations of the cross. Here's that time we made it really difficult for this guy who just came to save us. He's got to carry that cross, and he falls down. Well, don't help him. Oh, he's got to get back. Oh, he falls down again. These are the lessons we're taught very early on, that people are horrible, and in addition to a mistrust of our fellow man, we're also taught to fear. Forget Old Testament. Everything in the Old Testament, you're going to die. God's going to get you. There's no hope. But then the New Testament, loving. Oh, I love you, but there's going to be a couple of tests of that love. It's easy to be in crisis. As we get older and we look into other things, we look into Eastern religions, Taoism, Buddhism. There's very much a calmness there. It's like, okay, well, love is, and we just exist, and it's very calm. There's no carrying of big wooden stakes, and there's no getting nailed. There's no blood. There's no, Mel Gibson can't make a movie that makes us cringe. It's just, hey man, just love. So I feel like one of the Booth brothers. It's us. It's all about love. It's all about love, and there it is. And that's, whether we have a crisis of faith, whether we lose the church, whether we stop going to mass, whether we grow up and follow a different path, we still have all that baggage. We have all the guilt. We have all the teachings. And I remember, you brought up Adam Bly before. I remember having a big conversation with him about angels and demons. And I said, hey, Adam, well, okay, demons, they messed up. They backed the wrong horse. Mm-hmm. Can't they ever say, oops, I'm sorry. I really mean it. Can I come back? And he's like, oh, no, they can't do that. Angels had far seeing. They could see from the beginning of time to the end of time. They knew the consequences of their actions, and Lucifer was so convincing they did it anyway. So they are never going to be allowed back in God's grace. And I was like, yeah, well, we could murder 18 people and still say, I'm sorry, repent, and we could be forgiven. Like, that doesn't seem fair. And he goes, yes, well, that's why demons hate us. That's why they're so angry that we have stewardship of this world. And we had this big theological discussion. It made my head hurt, the cosmic significance of it all. But again, it comes down to, what do you believe?
Mm-hmm. I tell you, and let's jump into that now. Adam Bly is someone who, and we've had him on the show. We had him on the show. I want to say it was probably in the years of 2006 through 2008, and extremely interesting theologian, extremely interesting person that he, he'll break stuff down for you in a minute. But when he does, like you said, it'll either make your head hurt or it'll really make you think. It'll make you think about the weight of the universe and what is good versus evil, and whether those things really do exist on this earth. And there's an interesting chapter in the book, and again, I want people to read it for themselves, in which you and the Scared Crew come up against what you call your really only demonic experience in your career as an investigator. And in that, he kind of breaks down for you, as you just mentioned, why demons are what they are, and that they're fallen angels, that they've chosen to, they had it all. They had what the greatest gift God could have given them. They've turned their back on God and chosen, they made their choice, and basically will never be allowed back into the kingdom of heaven. Interestingly enough, much like you've gotten your time with Adam, I had my time with Adam at the Stanley Hotel. And when you go down to the galley there in the basement, I remember going down there with him and him explaining the difference between ordinary souls that were lost and demonic souls. And he said, there's spirits down here of just ordinary workers that are in the kitchen. And he said, oddly enough, they're genuflecting. I said, oh, that's weird. And he said, yeah, it really is. And I was trying to explain to him how, I've told this on the show before that shadow people run from me. I can't get shadow people to stay around me. They just don't. They run from me whenever I'm on an investigation. And I said, I just find that kind of odd. And you know how Adam sometimes, and he does it in your book, he'll get real quiet. And sometimes, and he does it in your book, he looks up at the ceiling, or he'll look up and he'll, it's like he's in a different world, but it's like he's reading the room, or he'll never talk directly to a spirit. He'll tell you that. I don't commune with the spirits. I'll pray for them.
Yeah.
But he'll read the room at the same time, which I find confusing. He's not a psychic. He'll tell you he's not a psychic, but he can, get a read of the room, and he'll tell the spirits, I'll pray for you, but I can't communicate with you. But at that point I ask him, so why is it that sometimes I can tell that there's spirits in the room, but but like shadow people run from me and stuff like that. And he simply looks at me. We're sitting at the mouth of the kitchen there, in two chairs, and there's that little hallway near the cave. And he just sits there and he kind of rocks back on his chair and goes, "Oh, Tim, sometimes God just protects his own." In just the most matter-of-fact way, without giving a scientific reason for it, but just a theological way of putting it. Just spiritual protection. Sometimes God just protects his own, but in such a deep manner, much like he was explaining to you about your demons, or the demon that you were facing at that particular hotel in the book, and kind of what was going on with your case. With that being said, in the long explanation of dealing with Adam Bly, there's something disturbing in the book having to do with a circle of fire. And Adam went about blessing this particular hotel. And when he did so, he blessed around this hotel room, but told the owner of the hotel, Blair, at the time, that he would not vanquish the demon that was in the room, because Blair kind of looked at the demon like an accoutrement to the hotel. It was part of the decoration of the hotel, because everything in the hotel is kind of has a Halloween theme to it, for lack of a better term, and people will find out more when they read the book. But it's far from a Halloween decoration. It's very dangerous, a very dangerous demon. I want you to first, Brian, tell people briefly how this demon changed your perspective when it comes to good and evil.
Well, for me, right after the case, and there was no quick end to it. After my experience at the Grand Midway Hotel, I've been back there several times. I was back there a couple of years later with Haunted Collector, where we did a case. I've been back there for creative projects. Chris Mancuso and I spent a week there incarcerated in what we called writer's jail, and it was a literal jail. Blair was the warden. He kept us under lock and key, and there was all different crazy characters, and we did time there. I'm currently in the Guinness Book of World Records for being part of Team Grand Midway, that we painted the world's largest Ouija board on the roof of the building. You could probably go to Google Maps right now, zoom into the building. It's still there.
Wow.
Since my experience, since my demonic encounter at the Grand Midway, obviously that entity has been cleared. There's been no evidence of it since. But my perspective on things, it was a very dark couple of years after that, because thinking, okay, well, I've been a paranormal investigator for a few years now, but this was an experience where, how do you fight a demon? You don't fight it. You are not equipped. It's an ant trying to fight a soldier with an M16 and landmines. But it's like, yeah, no, the ant is ill-equipped. Cannot. There's no way you cannot equal it. And the way that it's done, the way that they fight is not through their own might, but through prayer. They're calling in someone greater. They're like, all right, yeah, you might be stronger than me, but I've got a bigger friend than you. So at the end, and there was some revelations that were made to me in that whole case. But as much as I lamented that there was darkness and demons and the world is filling up with bad and evil, yes, there's evil. Absolutely. It's out there, whether you want to call it elemental evil or just the actions of a few or a cultural condemnation of certain actions. Evil is out there. But if it is, then so is good. And while evil is doing its thing, good is fighting back. And the tide comes in, the tide goes out, and we're caught in that wake. So that was another strengthening. That was another thing that kind of brought me back to spirituality and faith of some sorts. And I use faith in this term as far as a not necessarily a religion, but a trust in something greater. Because whether you're a believer or a skeptic, everybody operates on faith. Everyone operates on belief, whether it's in a deity or a religious system or the smart guys in the lab coats that says, don't eat this because it's going to give you cancer. None of us have examined any of these things ourselves or come face to face with it ourselves. We're just taking their word for it.
There's a point, and again, I'm going to point people back to the book and have them read it, but there's a point where you and Chris and Lisa Ann are confronting the demon, and Lisa can't. The demon is almost disguising himself as the man who was painting this demon in this room. To give people a little bit of background, the man who was conjuring this demon by painting it or channeling it and painting it on the walls of this room. The demon is disguising himself as this man and trying to tell his story to Lisa Ann, and she's not seeing it as anything as this man trying to tell his story, but this man isn't dead. He's very much alive. And you and Chris are hearing the din of your meters and not able to hear Lisa Ann trying to tell you guys, well, this guy wants to tell a story to you. Do you want to hear his story? And it's almost like you're being lured away by something almost supernaturally good trying to protect you. That's the way I interpret it. And she's not hearing the evil that's in her ear, trying to whisper to her to let me in so I can lure you away. Now, I have this question for you, and keep in mind, Lisa Ann's also your cousin, so I ask this with a bit of a gentle tone. Is it, and I've heard this many, many times, Brian, and this is only speculation. I hear this from a lot of psychics that well, there is no such thing as hell. But I'm on this plane all the time. I channel people from the other side all the time. I don't see fiery pits of hell. I don't see demons. I don't see anything like that. Is it that because demons can disguise themselves that they don't see the other side as fiery? Is this what you're learning?
Well, I don't necessarily think that the depiction of hell as we've gotten it from the Middle Ages and the paintings and from Dante's Inferno, even though there is some texts that talk about boiling pools and you will burn for this, hell for the most part, in the very classic sense, is not so much that you're going to go to a place to be tortured. It's saying that, all right, well, you were in God's presence. You were on the cool kids club, and now you are not. You are deprived of that. So many of the modern interpretations of hell is cold, a cold, barren snow. Like actually, the TV show Lucifer had it pretty modern in that every time he went back, it was just gray and empty and cold, and you see the random snowflakes coming about because again, God's presence, God's love is not there to warm you. You are now outside. You are cast out, very much like the fallen angels were. And when it comes to psychics saying, "Oh, well, I don't see this or I don't see that," they're as human as you or I. So they might have a perception of another intellect, another entity. But as far as seeing a place, I don't necessarily subscribe to the thought that hell is a place. It might be a dimension. It might be a state of mind, a state of being. You know, Oscar Wilde said that we make our own hells. Hell is us. The existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre said hell is other people. So even while we're alive, we're looking at conditions that to us are hellish. But when you pass over and you die, if there is some sort of judgment, and you're like, oh well, you didn't make it into the winner's circle, you're just out. You're somewhere else. The movie with Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come, has a interesting interpretation of it too. It's just a field of people, and they're all embedded with their faces hanging out, just embroiled in their own regrets. They're not able to break out of a cycle, and to me, that's hellish. Just a repetition of reliving your own failures. And if it's our mental states that create the fiery pits, then that's what causes it. You know, going back to creating your own reality. Well, that too is a reality. When you get to that state, you're in part an architect of your own punishment. We talk about discarnate spirits that haven't crossed over because of fear of judgment. That too is a self-imposed hell. But when it comes to psychics, they're not superheroes. They're not magicians. They are fallible. So when it came to my cousin not seeing the deception that was before her, again, luckily you had two diehard skeptics next to her to say, all right, we're balancing her out. Lee, we got to tell you some stuff. You don't have all the information. And that's why I think that system works, because again, where I might be a little too closed off or too pig-headed to not understand the enlightenment or the revelation as it's being shown to me until years later, and I write a book about it. In the moments, yeah, maybe she is too trusting, because you get a sense that, and this is a question I ask psychics all the time. I'm like, well, how do you know? How do you know that you're being told the truth? Oh, you said you spoke to this person. Well, how do you know? Did they flash their ID? Yeah. Like, oh no, well, we discern. We just feel, oh, it feels right. Or my guides told me. And I'm thinking, like, well, how do you know your guides are telling you the truth?
Right.
And on and on and on and on. And again, it comes down to faith. They choose to, great. Well, they've passed the tests for them to move forward in that. And we either have to trust them or disbelieve them. But they are just as fallible as we are. So the information they're getting still has to be interpreted via their experience, their wisdom, everything that they've been through. Like, that's why, say you had a 15-year-old psychic. Okay. Has she lived enough of the world yet to be able to understand the way social norms are, the way we operate? You know, the older we get, hopefully the more wisdom we gather, and we can conduct ourselves better, hold ourselves better. I mean, again, 2002, Brian had a lot of growing up to do, had a lot of experiences that he needed to temper his hot-headedness. And I feel like I've always been a diplomat. But that being said, I was always ready to roll into battle, to debate, if not fight. But these days, I feel like I could see the other side. I could understand the other person's perspective, and I'm not willing to argue or fight. I want to understand, and maybe we can come to a compromise. But that's just that's my perspective.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about changing perspectives, and I want to ask you how much. And this is one person I wanted to bring across and ask you a little bit about, and he's quite a bit of the book as well, and that's your relationship with John Zaffis and Ziggity. Talk a little bit talk a little bit about, and he's been quite influential on your life and career as well. Talk a little bit about how you and Chris run into old Ziggity. I know it had to do with phenomenology. That was the first time you met him, the first phenomenology, and in seeking him out. But man, talk about stars aligning and everything getting together. And a match made in heaven, so to speak. Boy, you guys hit it off, and you just kind of kept going from there. Talk a little bit about that and how things took off after the first phenomenology.
I've never been a fan of the expression "everything happens for a reason."
That's in the book as well. Yes, yeah.
It's a throwaway platitude that pretty much says, "Oh, I don't know how this happened." But if there was anything to make me believe in that, the series of events that led me to meet John, to end up on Haunted Collective, to be here today talking to you because of a decade's worth of experience. The universe put me where I needed to be, moved obstacles out of the way. I always tell people that when it comes to John, you can't be in the paranormal seriously for any amount of time and not run into him. It's not how it works. I mean, sure, we've just passed through COVID and the old man was staying home and you didn't see a lot of him. But if you're going to be in his realm, you're going to have to sit with the Godfather for a time.
Yep.
And Chris and I had gotten to that point where, all right, we've got our show, we're showing up to a convention and we always like to show up strong. And running into John was one of those rites of passage. You had to. It's just there's no way around it. And before you meet John, I mean, you hear the labels: Godfather of the Paranormal, John Zaffis and his Museum of the Paranormal. He's the nephew of Ed Warren. Now, more so today than back then, the names, the Warrens, are huge.
Yeah.
And that comes with it a bit of an intimidating air.
Mm-hmm.
And just depending on the day you run into the Ziggity, sometimes he's in a bad mood. And you could always tell by his posture behind his table. Mm-hmm. If he's sitting there and he's kind of looking around, and he's happy, yes, that's prime Ziggity time. But if he's sitting back and just kind of stroking his beard, God forbid he's doing a 3/4 turn to the table and his shoulder is pointing out to you, he doesn't want to take any of your shit.
That's right.
So don't tell him about the group you formed. Don't show him a picture. Don't just go get a coffee, come back. He'll be good in a minute.
Yep.
But our first encounter with him, again, I was so nervous. I was so panicked. I'm like, oh my God, Chris, we have to make a good impression, because if this is something we're doing, I want someone who's been doing it for a long time to feel like, all right, maybe these cats have something in them. Maybe there's something worthwhile that they bring to the table. And oh man, did he give us the business? He, as you'll see in the book, you'll see in the chapter, John Zaffis is an enigma. John Zaffis is a phenomenon unto himself, but he doesn't take himself as seriously as everyone else does, which is refreshing.
It is refreshing. I know. I think it was one of the phenomenologies he was doing. He was part of one of the group meet and greet signings. Where you sit at the table and they have you basically sign for everybody, and so he's sitting in one of those big signing things, and so we went out to Stacy Jones and I went out to one of the grocery stores to get provisions. And so it was, I think it was springtime. So they had the Hershey chocolate crucifixes, the crosses. So I picked up like a few of them, mainly because, I'm a diabetic and I love chocolate. But I told Stacy, boy, have I got a big joke for the Godfather. And she goes, no, really? I go, yeah. I go, come on, let's go back to the hotel. I said, he's on that big signing deal, right? And she goes, yeah. And I go, okay, let's get in line. So we butted into the line and I go, Godfather. And he goes, hey, Timmy. And I go, the power of Christ compels you in delicious milk chocolate. And I slid it across to him and he goes, jeez.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just one of those, just one of those cute little moments. But he has a great sense of humor. You couldn't do it with anybody else, but you can with him.
And that's the thing. And then because he's been a staple in the paranormal for decades. Would he celebrate his 50th year at Michigan Paracon this past year?
Yep.
50 years. So going by my math, every 10 years, he's graduated the high school. He's now into his college years in the paranormal. Mm-hmm. He's majoring in demonology. He's minoring in object collection, and he's putting in his time sharing his knowledge with everyone.
Now he's just putting up with us snot-nosed kids.
It's tough because I mean, he's taught me so much, and we're friends, we're family. I try very hard, and I told him this the other day. I try very hard not to trade on his name. Where some people would be like, "Oh, I know John Zaffis, and I've worked with John Zaffis." I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you the story if it's relevant." And unfortunately, I mean, a lot of my story, no, well, not unfortunately, but a lot of my stories do have John in them because he was there when it happened. But he's never a character that's brought in to make my tale seem any more legit. It's just, okay, John was there, or this is something John taught me, or on the road with John, this happened. And I felt it was very important because I see a lot of people, and there was a period of time, and that's the thing. I've been in this game a long time. Started on MySpace. We got Facebook now. I watch people. I'm minored in psychology, so I'm always trying to figure out how people think, what their motivations are. And I've seen a lot of people come to him, take a picture with him, then posted that, "Oh, I worked with John Zaffis." And you didn't work with John Zaffis. You met him at a convention, and you posted a picture where he's like, "Oh, hey." It's deceptive, and you have a lot of people that will try to link their train car to his engine, and this happens with a lot. This happens with a lot of people in the paranormal. They see someone who's on TV a lot, or has certain notoriety or certain fame, and they're like, "Oh, I want to be in that camp." And yeah, I've been Team Zaffis for a long time now, but it's more of a guardian. I'm John's Swiss guard. You know, if he's the Pope of the Paranormal, that's a new one. The Pope of the Paranormal.
Pope of the Paranormal. I like that one. Yeah.
I'm a member of the Swiss Guard.
Yeah. Yeah. I just enjoy the man himself. I'm a bit of a jokester myself, so I've got pictures of him stealing my disability equipment, like my knee caddy. There's a picture of him in Texas. I think I got video of him too, like riding away on it. I got him in Michigan stealing my power cart. Stuff like that. Just funny stuff. I like the funny side of John Zaffis. So
how many pictures has he taken where he's pantomiming cutting off my ponytail? So many. Yeah. And nowadays it's like, I can't do that anymore, Ziggity.
Yeah. See, get rid of it, and I can't cut it off. So you know what? Before we conclude today, I got to tell you, Brian, there's a chapter in this book. Again, I think we're musical soul brothers. There's a chapter in here about you going to see Hall & Oates. Tell our listening audience. I think this one we can kind of spoil a little bit. You had the experience of a lifetime, or at least you were set up to have the experience of a lifetime. Tell our audience about what happened.
I'm a big 80s movie fan, and I love the music of the 80s, and I just love a lot of things that came out of that time. So on any given day, you can hear me listening to Genesis, Huey Lewis and the News, Hall & Oates, and for me, it's evergreen. And actually, just the other day, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to travel 4 hours to go to Mohegan Sun to go see them or not. But I was going to be traveling to Indiana the very next day for the history of the paranormal. And I thought, that might not be a good idea. But as chronicled in the book, there have been some adventures and misadventures wrapped up in my association in fandom with Hall & Oates that maybe I should have gone, because I would have been on another grand adventure. But when I was young, my mother worked at Friendly's restaurants, and she had people that would come in. I remember Dave Winfield of the New York Yankees would come in, and she'd give him coffee, and every now and then a personality would come through. And one day, the mother of one of Hall & Oates' session musicians came through, and then they would strike up a conversation. She's like, "Oh, this is what my son does. He works for Hall & Oates. Oh, my son loves Hall & Oates." And it turned out that she was able to secure tickets for me. The tickets, and this was I want to say sometime in the 90s, because I was in high school, and Hall Notes were huge in the 80s. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
just hit after hit after hit after hit. They were the soundtrack of many a person's summer.
Yep.
By the 90s, you had music television. It was grunge was now coming to a forefront. It was complaint rock, and it was like, ugh, as music does,
Mhm.
it turns over and a new batch comes in. So even though they never had gone away, Hall Notes seemed like a passe thing. Like, oh, that was so then. They're not whatever. Not for me. They were a constant of my life,
Mhm.
and as such, I couldn't find anyone to go to the concert with me.
Oh,
I just, I wasn't the most popular kid in high school, and I went to an all boys school, so it's not like I really wanted to bro up with anybody to go to a Hall Notes concert.
right, right.
Even close friends of mine, they're like, "Oh no, I don't like them that much." But come on, somebody. Neighbors of ours, we'd been neighbors in the apartment building I originally grew up in, and then when we moved to a different neighborhood, that friends of my parents had also moved with us, so we were always in close proximity. And as such, there was this one girl that I had grown up with, that we were friends when we were little. But then, as it happens, when you get to high school, boys and girls, we change,
Yep.
we become different, and then all of a sudden things become awkward. And
Yeah.
going to an all boys school, that just accentuated the awkwardness. So I was kind of set up in a friendly way
Mhm.
with my neighbor's daughter, who I shouldn't have had any problems or any compunctions with being around, because we'd grown up together. But again, high school, hormones, and what's this? She's got this shape now. Ooh, what's I don't know. Hey,
Yeah.
what am I feeling? And what is she looking at? And what's going to happen? And why am I sweating? And long story short, it came to pass that when we went to the concerts, I had been given more than just tickets. There were also backstage passes, unbeknownst to me,
There you
in
go.
that envelope that was left for me at will call. And because of the aforementioned awkwardness and lack of confidence, when I said, "Hey, what are these things that they gave us?" She's like, "Oh, they're probably just some nice yellow stickers." And
Oh,
any girl says anything with a little bit of a shake, I believed it. I said, "Oh, okay, there's just probably stickers," and that was that. Come to find out the next day that yes, they were backstage passes. I could have met Hall and Oates, and that put me on a path that for many years to come, this story would be one of those. Oh, I could have, and it didn't, and it was a woe full tale that, when you read the book, you'll find out it ended up in a very different way, in ways I could not have predicted. And it's funny because as I wrote that chapter,
mhm.
the book was 21 chapters long. I said, okay, I'm probably done, but you know what? I would love to get it to 22.
Yeah.
Right, my birthday is on the 22nd. 22 is a number for me. 22, that was my number when I played softball and back in school.
Mhm.
22, that's just 22. Let's get it to 22. I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the screen. I've got maybe 2 hours until I have to leave to go to a Hall Notes concert. And I'm like, oh. And I just started writing. I'm like, so chapter 22, Hall Notes, 22. It's magic.
It's magic right there. I don't know if you remember. First of all, do you watch Daryl's House? Do you watch the show Daryl's House on?
I have seen
Access?
it, yes.
Do you enjoy it? I like it. I like the show.
I do. It's one of those shows that it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Who knew he could cook?
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it just shows that there's more facets to all of us than just what you're known for.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, all right, like for instance, just yesterday, and I'm not sure when it'll be when this airs, but the new Ghostbusters video game just came out. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed.
Mhm.
And I got it yesterday. I started playing, and it's a cooperative game where you can now play multiplayer with people from all over the world. So I'm going to say, hey guys, I love the paranormal, I love Ghostbusters, but video games, come play with me online, and you can meet up with other people, and they could say, oh, well, I played with Brian from Haunted Collector, and we busted ghosts together. And I love games. I made a card game, Three Pillars.
Yep.
And so many people want to just put you in a box, and they say, well, this is what you are. And I'm like, no, well, I'm this and this and this and this. And I want to check all the boxes.
Yeah.
So card games, video games, write a book, be on screen, be on TV, be in a movie, be on stage. I really want to do it all.
Right on. And as you should, as should everybody. I love watching Daryl's House. I love watching, and I still listen to Hall & Oates to this day. I've never given up on Hall & Oates. In fact, I missed them the last time they were in town here. Nobody wanted to go with me.
Oh, well, you call me. I'll find a way to get down there.
There you go.
COVID killed the last Hall & Oates album, because they said, we've got some material. We're thinking about doing a new album. We're going to do it. And then when COVID hit, they were apart doing their old things. And as they do, they're like, let's think about some solo stuff. So Daryl did some solo stuff. John did some solo stuff. They're not spring chickens.
No.
So we will probably never see another Hall & Oates album.
That's a downer to end the show.
Yeah. So the world is horrible. It
is. It's full of evil and no Hall & Oates albums.
Evil and no Hall & Oates.
Damn it. What is encouraging is there is a book out there on Brian's life. You can pick up Grains of Sand, Tales of a Paranormal Life is available right now. We have a we have a link in the description of the show. I'm so distraught right now. I can't even get that out, Brian. But there's a link available right now. Also, History of the Paranormal. I take it we'll put up the link as well to your information, to your website and whatnot, so that you can follow Brian around the country and check out his History of the Paranormal exhibit as well. And are there more episodes with you as far as Paranormal Caught on Camera coming out?
Paranormal Caught on Camera currently in Ghostober on Travel Channel. They're airing the second half of season 5. We're already well into filming season 6. Okay. So there is more Peacock coming your way. Like I always tell people, you keep watching, we'll keep making them.
There you go. Exactly. And anything else you want to throw out there?
I'm thankful to everyone who's listened to this. Thankful for anyone who's stopped by to see me at a convention, just to share a story. Because again, just like I said, you keep watching, we'll keep making them. But without you guys, I can't continue my projects. I can't continue to do what I do, since no one lives in a vacuum. There's that symbiotic relationship. I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Brian J.Cano, where the people there, it's a little community, and they help fund the History of the Paranormal Museum, and it keeps growing because of patron support. The documentary series that I've been really, really lax on finishing, I really got to get to it, the Paranormal Compendium, which again will educate, hopefully while entertaining, but gives you that foundation of things in the paranormal. And these are interviews that I filmed years ago, but it's still evergreen. So for anyone who wants to get deeper into what I do, I also I have an apprentice program on there where I can teach you almost anything in the paranormal. And if I can't, I could tell you who I can refer you to. That's all on my Patreon page. And for everything else, Brian, go to neverstopsearching.com.
All right. We'll make sure those links are up for you so that you can go ahead and click on them and check them out. Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining us again, my friend. And again, you're such a wellspring of information, and we appreciate you. You bring so much to this field, my friend, and we really do appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you, Tim.
Thank you as well. Folks, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week for a great week here on Darkness Radio. I want to thank Beer City Bruiser for joining us this week as co-host. I want to thank our sponsor, which is Microdose Gummies, and thank them for supporting the program. And want to remind you that you can go to microdose.com, check out Microdose Gummies, and remind you that you can get free shipping and 30% off your first order by going to microdose.com and getting those Microdose Gummies. Folks, be sure to take care of yourself and each other. Do something good for somebody this weekend. A reminder that people down in Florida are still needing to rebuild down there. You can check out any organization down there that is helping to rebuild. Be sure to do something nice, maybe donate a few dollars to help those people down there rebuild. There's a lot of people that are going to be freezing down there this weekend. There's lots of winter storms down there this weekend. A reminder that there's organizations down there that are looking for coats, blankets, etc. Do something good for your neighbors and for your fellow man down there this weekend. Help somebody in the South this weekend as far as just getting bundled up. We're going to have a cold winter this year. We've got to do what we can to help our fellow man. So just be a good citizen this year and help somebody out this year. Just be a good citizen this weekend. Take 5 minutes and maybe $5 and help out somebody. Help your fellow man and do it for your buddies here at Darkness Radio. For Beer City Bruiser and for Mally and for Jess, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for being a listener of Darkness Radio. Reminder, send your email to tim@darknessradio.com. Send your Parashare stories there. But more importantly, just in 3 months alone, we've passed the 1 million listen mark on Audio Boom. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you, if you win our contest, again, no purchase necessary, send us an email with the subject line, I want to be in the Million-Airs, AIRS Club, and we're making a one-of-a-kind item with the I'm in the Millionaires Club on it. It's a one-of-a-kind item. We'll reveal what it is next week, and we're drawing on Halloween on October 31st for that one-of-a-kind item that will go to one special listener. It's coming up again. We'll draw for it on October 31st, but we'll unveil it next week as to what that special item is. It's one of a kind. One special listener gets that item. We'll have some secondary prizes for other listeners as well. But you can join the Millionaires Club and get that special. It's almost like a physical NFT. I don't know what else to call it, but it is what it is. But be sure to enter. Email tim@darknessradio.com. Join the Millionaires Club, Million-Airs. Do that by emailing tim@darknessradio.com. Thanks so much for joining us this week, folks. And thank you very much for listening to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.